Hello, my dear fellows. This time I want to open a brief chapter concerning global warming or climate blackmail. My definition for this climate change issue or scheme, I want to name it, is rather than climate change, I would address it as climate blackmail, because that's the most appropriate definition and term for the issue. The reason of this, I'm starting talking about the whole history of the climate. They are, talking about more of establishment and some part of the scientific world which are funded by the establishment in terms of billions of euros and dollars. They are funded, and therefore, of course, they are more than encouraged to go ahead and bring up whatever argument actually that comes from the thesis or the theory. Well, let's start beginning from the history. Climate, it's something we have to end better climate. We have to understand actually the geology, the history of planet Earth. Because some would immediately say, well, human being started just a couple of centuries, so it's so recent with this industrial revolution, and in the past we didn't have all this technology, we didn't pollute the earth. I actually, to confirm, I don't want to get anyone to get wrong. I do believe actually that the human being in a way is polluting the earth. That's something undeniable. I don't want to deny that, but I'm instead more skeptic concerning this anthropogenic global warming, because that's the appropriate name or definition. Anthropogenic global warming or made global warming. Going back to our history, to the history of climate, what we know basically is that that the climate on our planet Earth has always been changing, and this is something undeniable. And I would call those who are denying that climate history change deniers. That's a really appropriate term, because we are actually denying or totally erasing, whitewashing a history of changes. We know, we have really the certainty, we know for certain that in the past our civilization has been through really warmer periods during the Roman Empire, the Middle Age. This is witnessed by various factors. During the Roman Empire, the crossing of the Alps of Hell was enabled and actually more easy to realize thanks to temperature, so less ice on the Alps, and it did the Alps as we know, it brought animals which are really tropical animals and not really fit to cross through. Some are denying these facts or saying, okay, the historians actually described this crossing of the Alps, but it was cold, and I'm denying it, but it was cold, but it was actually more, and for many it would have been really more difficult to face this challenge nowadays. Another period, we had like warmer climate, which was not really connected to any industrial revolution. We didn't have any release of carbon dioxide. Was when during the Middle Age, we know we had were many historians witnessing that they were farming. We had farming of barley in Greenland and vineyards in the UK, in Great Britain. So for the farming and this period, we had a good leap of a civilization went forward, because they could actually improve the agricultural techniques, and this was actually really helpful because of warming. So but that's another point. Warming is not really so bad that they are describing. I mean, another point about this global warming hysteria is that global warming means any disease will bring the end of the planet. That's actually the blackmail. I mean, it's like in 12 years, X days, minutes, and seconds. We are predicting the exact time, really, in seconds, which is quite impossible, even if you really follow and believe this scam. It's not really believable that we could like predict it so exact in so exact terms. And here is something we're always been playing, because already in the 70s we were talking about global cooling, which is more maybe accurate to truth, because we have more possibilities of a new cooling. And well, get back to the global warming so-called issue and problem. When we really look in something I actually now is mentioning is we really, there's no actually proof that global warming is something so catastrophic for humanity and for the planet as well, for civilization. Because I mean, we're not telling really after is ending. I don't want to be dishonest. I mean, the actual global warming, climate change, climate blackmail peddlers are more talking about the end as a civilization returns. We know nowadays that we'll maybe go back to the Stone Age, more or less. That's what we're predicting. But that's not really so accurate. I mean, unless we should have like a really severe global warming, really where the ocean is kind of really boiling, telling that the sea level are meters and meters, and there's no proof there, because the sea levels are rising. I mean, rising like centimeters per century in the last. I mean, nothing extraordinary, nothing's being changed. The whole planet in the past was covered by, I mean, the dry areas of the planet was pretty much huger. We know quite for certainty that in like million of years ago, the different, quite all of the planet were not separated into by oceans. It's called Pangea. It was like the whole planet with all the continents were united. So we didn't have really continents at the time. We had like a kind of one continent, and then the sea levels were rising, and step by step these areas between oceans were filled by water. That's something, so this is something that really occurred in the past without any kind of human intervention. Right now, the main narrative in this global warming is that we're going to have a so severe temperatures that the whole planet, like huge areas, will plunge under the water surface, and it will be so warm that we should have like water shortages. We were practically able to survive. We're going like to global acidification of the oceans, and so on and so on, which is really hard to prove, because in effect, as we know today, an increase of temperatures until now has been always positive for our civilization, and that's it. Another argument and point of a global warming climate blackmail is like seeing all the skeptics. We're not talking about skeptics anymore, which, since we don't have any tangible proof of our future. We can't really predict in so exactly our future, the future as well. There's no way to do it. By that, they are not addressing those who are not really following this narrative and opposing the narrative. They are just calling them climate change deniers. And that's something also quite curious, rather curious. Few people are noticing, few people actually do notice that we changed the definition during the last decade. Because they were actually calling, I'm talking especially about Al Gore, who started the myth, even if he was really the first one, because there are possibilities that he was fired in effect by fact, who didn't actually peddle this global warming she just around the 70s, 80s, in order to reduce the dependency oil from the Eastern. She did a little bit scare the population about a possible global cooling, in effect more warming. So the a kind of possible climate change, influencing it with release of the use of crude oil, with fossil fuels, but this was actually influencing badly the climate. But this was not really in order to peddle everything we see today. I mean, of course, it was not totally honest, but she had some kind of we say, in a way, a good reason, even it's a bit making one. It was, well, we can excuse it. But anyway, Al Gore, he was inspired by this climate change, global cooling, global warming, called it wasn't really so definite at the time. We're predicting anyway that we could have some issues if we were increasing and using fossil fuels more and more. And this, as I told before, was basically a way to try to force the population, or to encourage the population to use less fossil fuels in order to reduce their in order to reduce the dependency of fossil fuels deriving from the Middle East, and we know how the situation of the conflict. So, well, we could in a way excuse her for this. But anyway, Al Gore is the real climate change, global warming promoter. He's like the toughest and strongest one, and he's been like many years playing this thing, and been already, people quite forget it already, predicting for around year 2015 severe levels. So Miami and Florida, New York, Venice, Hong Kong, and other parts of the globe would already be drowning under the water surface. This haven't happened, all right, and of course, as we know, okay, we just get on about a couple of decades, and now we are peddling it again that its next date is year 2030, and they are already really certain about a specific date in year 2030, which is ironical and quite impossible to do. I mean, any sound person would doubt that really that science is able to predict a certain date. However, as I mentioned before, another point of we who are actually skeptical of this global warming hysteria is the fact that they change the global warming issue into definition into climate change, and that's in order to set a more flexible term on this warming. So I mean, they are called skepticals for climate change deniers, which is really inappropriate. No one in the right mind is actually opposing climate change, because climate has always been changed in that respect. Point is here, what is the real influence of a human being on climate? How we're interfering on climate. This is the real point. And this is something which is really hard to determine, because we know that there are many major factors influencing the climate, like the solar activity, solar flare, the wobbling on the earth on its axis, the volcanic eruptions, many other things. And another point really unclear concerning this climate change is about the carbon dioxide argument. Carbon dioxide, in opposition to what we are, this mainstream talking point, carbon dioxide in fact is a good factor for a planet. For life on Earth is really dependent on carbon dioxide. So this is carbon dioxide is not a real polluter unless we had, of course, a really outstanding rate of carbon dioxide in order, I don't know, about 5% whatever, of course, that would be maybe intoxicating the planet. But on the current scale, on a small, on what we have now, the current state of carbon dioxide is not really harming our planet. On the contrary, it's really improving life on our planet. And according to many studies, we have even a really low rate of level of carbon dioxide on our planet now. Maybe one of the lowest in the history. Actually, we are able to track our planet. So it's not a real. I know for certain that we know naturally with a greenhouse. The greenhouse, because we're the greenhouse effect number and topic of the issue. The greenhouse is the carbon dioxide in a greenhouse produced order, at least in order to grow better vegetables and plants. And that's a demonstration that we really need carbon dioxide. I'm not talking about you as species, but as about also on behalf of the world, on the plants, or many other animals. If we think about also the animal world, the majority of the animals of our planet are more adaptable to the tropical climate rather than to the Arctic climate. Or an Arctic climate, I mean to a polar climate. And this is something we can easily demonstrate, because there are a really huger amount of species in the tropical environments. We have the highest amounts of variety of animals. If we go to a tropical forest, it's outstanding that we find so many different type of plants. This is something anyone can really check out, like you check it out easily without any problem. So no, the polar climate is not it's not really beneficial, not only to a human being, not only on an anthropological point of view, but also on zoological point of view or a botanical view. So we as human species are, the contrary, a little bit more flexible and adapting, because we can generate an artificial environment. So we are able in Arctic climates, in colder climates, to settle for like a quite good community, to establish a better situation, because we are able. So in fact, as I was mentioning before, the animal kingdom is not so capable of generating an artificial environment as the human species is. So that's actually that global warming is even more beneficial to animal kingdom or potentially that the human being. I'm talking about this on the above the surface when we're talking about the fishes and all the animal species in the oceans, of course, where that's another point. That's something else. And also there, anyways, where the water is when water is colder, we have also a lesser also and also where the water is colder, there's a really lesser amount of species. I'm mentioning also this in the oceans. We have, so if we think about it, it's just something really general. I mean, and an increase of a global, on global scale on the cap shelf, and wouldn't really so beneficial to many animal species. They would go extinct. So this is something no one is mentioning. Showing this bear pictures nearly drowning. It has become like an iconic picture, and emotional also because there are many humans involved in the global warming. And this is showing like picture of animals like dying or starving because of our increase of the temperatures. I mean something imaginary because it's not really something they can demonstrate. We're just showing that there are no ice in that area and that the polar bear is swimming, so the huge risk for this polar bear in this case is drowning. But no one is mentioning that when we have when it's too cold and colder, there are many animals starving, really starving. That's the reason I think about it. Wolves, which are usually really shy animals, are pushing to many towns, or have been pushing in the past during the colder because they were starving, they didn't have much to eat, and many other animals were starving. Also bears, they have the same issue. They are usually going into during winter period and accumulating food for winter, and but when this actual food have been compounded and accumulated during summertime finishes, there are some problems also for these bears, like grizzly bears or brown bears. Well, this is just like your quite general arguments that tells that global warming, of course, on a regular scale, is not really so bad for all the animal and animal kingdom. So it's only on an anthropical point of view, anthropocentric point of view. I mean, so we, of course, well, I do remark that occasionally low increased temperatures that might be naturally really negative for life on planet Earth, but we are really talking about a scale of maybe 20 degrees more, and it would be really harmful on the whole planet. Because if you think about it, if like the Arctic areas in the northern part, the temperature would increase, they could have like a tropical climate where, and of course on the equator, on the coast side, where we have really severe issues and desertification, of course, because it's, when we're talking about global issues, it's not really, it wouldn't really influence on the same way the whole planet. This is something also we're not mentioning. I'm not telling that this would be really good. It's really hard to predict. I mean, to say what would occur if we had like an increase of 10-20 degrees Celsius. So it might be quite harmful. But in this case, we're talking about a really low increase, but we are saying that like a increase of 0.8 or 1.5 or 2 degrees Celsius, which is really that this is harming planet and our civilization, whatever, and animal kingdom, and all the fishes the sea would die for all the assassination or whatever. A bit exaggerated because not everyone is stating this, but no, this is totally false. So we have to get back, and I want to say again and to claim again really firmly that this is the whole talking point of this video is not a denial of issues where we are actually facing the pollution, but it's more concerning the pollution of our rivers and the air in some urban areas, and this is more harming like human beings than maybe animals, and I mean the health, it's more damaging the health. But if you think about also on that point of view, many towns in the past had like worse pollution, were facing a worse pollution like London in the 70s, 60s than today, because we have like cleaner cars, and cleaner heating systems. It's really not so bad as it was in the 60s and 20s. We have instead like maybe helping us with some issues 1670s because we are using old cars. We are not so developed also in the industry and the technology, so they are facing the same problems. China instead is facing some problems concerning pollution because of overpopulation, maybe we could say, and over industrialization, because there are some areas where rivers really are polluted and reasons, but that's something really else. I mean, and it's something we could also solve with technological development, because we are constantly developing cleaner technologies, solving all these problems, and so it's not getting worse, it's improving in a way. Even if we think about the Middle Age or the 20th century, we had really dirty towns. Think about it, when we were approaching a larger town like Paris, Rome, or London, whatever. There are many accounts about it, like in the 17th century, of travelers. They could feel and smell the approaching of a town before even before we could see the town physically. So it was really like people were trashing the roads, and they had no regulation, actually really good organization concerning the trash and the damper. We could actually damp all the waste. So this is another point. And in effect the Romans, they were more organized. So thousands of years ago, compared to many places like in the Middle Age and even later on, they were more organized concerning the damp wastewater. If someone would actually think that what I'm doing, trying to downsize the issue, downplaying the problem, I would rather say that I'm finding the right dimension of the whole thing. So I would call all this are peddling the global warming than historical climate change deniers. They are in effect